Chapters 1 through 4 of Book 1 of Les Miserables, Volume 3, by Victor Hugo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Caitlin Foley. Les Miserables, Volume 3, by Victor Hugo. Translated by Isabel Florence Hapgood. Book 1. Paris Studied in Its Atom. Chapter 1. Parvulus. Paris has a child, and the forest has a bird. The bird is called the sparrow. The child is called the gamin. Couple these two ideas, which contain, the one all the furnace, the other all the dawn. Strike these two sparks together. Paris. Childhood. There leaps out from them a little being. Homuncio, Plautus would say. This little being is joyous. He has not food every day, and he goes to the play every evening if he sees good. He has no shirt on his body, no shoes on his feet, no roof over his head. He is like the flies of heaven, who have none of these things. He is from 7 to 13 years of age. He lives in bands, roams the streets, lodges in the open air, wears an old pair of trousers of his father's, which descend below his heels, an old hat of some other father, which descends below his ears, a single suspender of yellow listing. He runs, lies in wait, rummages about, wastes time, blackens pipes, swears like a convict, haunts the wine shops, knows thieves, calls yea women thou, talks slang, sings obscene songs, and has no evil in his heart. This is because he has in his heart a pearl, innocence, and pearls are not to be dissolved in mud. So long as man is in his childhood, God wills that he shall be innocent. If one were to ask that enormity, "What is this?" she would reply, "It is my little one." Chapter 2. Some of his particular characteristics. The gamin, the street Arab, of Paris is the dwarf of the giant. Let us not exaggerate. This cherub of the gutter sometimes has a shirt, but in that case he owns but one. He sometimes has shoes, but then they have no soles. He sometimes has a lodging, and he loves it, for he finds his mother there. But he prefers the street, because there he finds liberty. He has his own games, his own bits of mischief, whose foundations consists of hatred for the bourgeois, his peculiar metaphors, to be dead is to eat dandelions by the root, his own preoccupations, calling hackney coaches, letting down carriage steps, establishing means of transit between the two sides of a street in heavy rains, which he calls making the Bridge of Arts, crying discourses pronounced by the authorities in favor of the French people, cleaning out cracks in the pavement. He has his own coinage, which is composed of all the little morsels of worked copper which are found on the public streets. This curious money, which receives the name of loques, rags, has an invariable and well-regulated currency in this little Bohemia of children. Lastly, he has his own fauna, which he observes attentively in the corners, the ladybird, the death's-head plant-louse, the daddy-long-legs, the devil, a black insect, which menaces by twisting about its tail armed with 2 horns. He has his fabulous monster, which has scales under its belly, but is not a lizard, which has pustules on its back, but is not a toad, which inhabits the nooks of old lime kilns, and wells that have run dry, which is black, hairy, sticky, which crawls sometimes slowly, sometimes rapidly, which has no cry, but which has a look, and is so terrible that no one has ever beheld it. He calls this monster the deaf thing. The search for these deaf things among the stones is a joy of formidable nature. Another pleasure consists in suddenly prying up a paving stone, and taking a look at the woodlice. Each region of Paris is celebrated for the interesting treasures which are to be found there. There are earwigs in the timber yards of Ursuline. There are millipedes in the Pantheon. There are tadpoles in the ditches of the Champ de Mars. As far as sayings are concerned, This child has as many of them as Talleyrand. He is no less cynical, but he is more honest. He is endowed with a certain indescribable, unexpected joviality. He upsets the composure of the shopkeeper with his wild laughter. He ranges boldly from high comedy to farce. A funeral passes by. Among those who are accompanying the dead, there is a doctor. "Hey there!" shouts some street Arab. "How long has it been customary for doctors to carry home their own work?" Another is in a crowd, a grave man, adorned with spectacles and trinkets, turns round indignantly. "You good-for-nothing, you have seized my wife's waist." "Aye, sir. Search me." Chapter 3. He is agreeable. In the evening, thanks to a few sous, which he always finds means to procure, the homuncio enters a theatre. On crossing that magic threshold, he becomes transfigured. He was the street Arab. He becomes the Titi. Theatres are a sort of ship turned upside down with the keel in the air. It is in that keel that the Titi huddles together. The Titi is to the gamin what the moth is to the larva, the same being endowed with wings and soaring. It suffices for him to be there, with his radiance and happiness, with his power of enthusiasm and joy, with his hand clapping, which resembles a clapping of wings, to confer on that narrow, dark, fetid, sordid, unhealthy, hideous, abominable keel the name of paradise. Bestow on an individual the useless and deprive him of the necessary, and you have the gamin. The gamin is not devoid of literary intuition. His tendency, as we say it with the proper amount of regret, would not constitute classic taste. He is not very academic by nature. Thus, to give an example, the popularity of Mademoiselle Mars among that little audience of stormy children was seasoned with a touch of irony. The gamin called her Mademoiselle Mouche. Hide yourself. This being bawls and scoffs and ridicules and fights, has rags like a baby and tatters like a philosopher, fishes in the sewer, hunts in the cesspool, extracts mirth from foulness, whips up the squares with his wit, grins and bites, whistles and sings, shouts and shrieks, tempers Alleluia with Montarte Lurette, chants every rhyme from the de profundis to the jack-pudding, finds without seeking, knows what he is ignorant of, is a Spartan to the point of thieving, is mad to wisdom, is lyrical to filth, would crouch down on Olympus, wallows in the dunghill and emerges from it covered with stars. The gamin of Paris is Rabelais in his youth. He is not content with his trousers unless they have a watch pocket. He is not easily astonished. He is still less easily terrified. He makes songs on superstitions. He takes the wind out of exaggerations. He twits mysteries. He thrusts out his tongue at ghosts. He takes the poetry out of stilted things. He introduces caricature into epic extravaganzas. It is not that he is prosaic, far from that, but he replaces the solemn vision by the farcical phantasmagoria. If Adamastor were to appear to him, the street Arab would say, "Hi there, bugaboo!" Chapter 4. He may be of use. Paris begins with the lounger and ends with the street Arab, two beings of which no other city is capable. The passive acceptance which contents itself with gazing, and the inexhaustible initiative, Prudhomme and Fouillou. Paris alone has this in its natural history. The whole of the monarchy is contained in the lounger, the whole of anarchy in the gamin. This pale child of the Parisian faubourgs lives and develops, makes connections, grows supple in suffering, in the presence of social realities and of human things, a thoughtful witness. He thinks himself heedless, and he is not. He looks and is on the verge of laughter. He is on the verge of something else also. Whoever you may be, if your name is prejudice, abuse, ignorance, oppression, iniquity, despotism, injustice, fanaticism, tyranny, beware of the gaping gamin. The little fellow will grow up. Of what clay is he made? Of the first mud that comes to hand. a handful of dirt, a